I love Pokemon. Some of my earliest memories, way back when I was like 3 or 4 years old, is me watching the Pokemon anime. Pokemon has always been a pillar in my life that persists to this day. I watch the anime, I collect the toys, and most importantly, I play the games. The first game I've ever played was Gold version on my lime green Game Boy. That's the reason I now have 3 different copies of Heart Gold version for the 3DS. And yeah, I've played all the mainline games, I've played the spin-offs, old and new. I have always, throughout my life, played the new Pokemon adventures as soon as I could. But I don't want to play Legend ZA. Legend ZA has had a clunky time with its marketing. It released information at a snail's pace, and thanks to the fact Game Freak constantly changes mechanics and gimmicks with every new game, we didn't even know if we'd be able to change our characters' clothes for a good while there. You'd think it would be a given in the modern day and age where customizing your character is pretty common, even in Pokemon games. Pokemon introduced the idea way back with X and Y, but Scarlet and Violet has shown us that you can't take anything for granted when it comes to what gimmicks Pokemon is going to keep around. Pokemon has always been kind of behind the times compared to its contemporaries. After Pokemon became the biggest success ever, it wasn't a surprise other creature collectors started to pop up. And while Pokemon set the standard, they also had the tendency to get stuck in their old ways. A pretty notorious example is how long it took for Pokemon to start using 3D graphics in a mainline game. X and Y was the first time you could explore a new generation in full 3D in October of 2013. How exciting! Well, that excitement was a bit diminished when, earlier that year, Yokai Watch's first game released with 3D graphics too. And arguably better graphics. Your yokai do funny little dances after every battle, while Pokemon kind of sit really still. And that was just 2013. Dragon Quest Monster Joker had expressive 3D graphics all the way back in 2006. That's a whole console before Pokemon. For context, the current Pokemon game at that time was Diamond and Pearl. They would still have all of the Unova generation before they finally caught up on using 3D themselves. All of this is to say that we're all pretty accustomed to the Pokemon Company being a bit behind graphically compared to its competition. But we overlooked the issue because, even though it might not be hyper HD, super realistic looking, it was at least fun. It's a good game, with fun gameplay and a compelling story. While every new gimmick might not stick around, it would at least offer something different for you to experiment with while going on your adventure. But you might have noticed I'm speaking in past tense. I've made a video going over my thoughts on Scarlet and Violet. TLDR, it's got a lot of issues. Scarlet and Violet has really shattered my trust with the Pokemon Company. It dropped the ball in so many ways. Not just graphically, though it's a huge issue with these games, but the gameplay, exploration, and battles all feel subpar too. And while I think certain plot elements and characters are done extraordinarily well, it's also a lot that's very forgettable. Scarlet and Violet might have been the thing that opened my eyes, but it wasn't the only game that led towards my eventual disappointment. In fact, the last 3, maybe 4 mainline games have let me down. Sword and Shield had terrible characters and story and was painfully too linear with a lame generational gimmick. The Alola games struggled to run on the 3DS, was filled with non-stop hand-holding and cutscenes, and had my least favorite generational gimmick yet. And heck, even Kalos had similar issues of being too linear with too much hand-holding. These issues have been building up over the years, and the real cherry on top, Legends Arceus. I don't like it. Like, at all. I don't like the open world. It's ugly and empty and not fun to explore. I hate crafting in games. I can't stand the style of combat where it's half menus, like a turn-based RPG, but real time where you have to run around and dodge. And I know a lot of this is just my own issues with personal preferences. Like, I don't like playing first-person shooters, because I suck at aiming. So I don't play them. It's simple. If I don't like crafting open worlds and real-time turn-based combat, don't play it. Well, remember what I said at the start? Pokemon is hugely important to me. Part of the reason I love turn-based RPGs is because Pokemon was so important to me when I first started playing games. So while I don't mind a Pokemon game changing things up gameplay-wise every now and then, they just keep doing this. After Breath of the Wild became a huge success, it's been so exhausting watching Nintendo try to shove the same open-world crafting system style into every single other of their franchises, desperate to mimic their past success. But despite all of that, I was initially very excited to play Legends EA. I like the idea of being a hipster in Poke France. I really like how much customization you will have for your characters. I'm intrigued by the story. I like some of the new Mega Evolutions. I was so ready to give the game a fighting chance. But then Digimon happened. I like creature collectors. Obviously, I've referenced a few of my faves already, and I really love Digimon. I started seeing gameplay popping up and instantly got excited. An actual Digimon game with turn-based combat? Sign me up! The last Digimon game I played was Survive, and while I do enjoy it and its tactical grid-based RPG gameplay, this style of gameplay is my real love. I got the demo to check it out, and as I played, a lot of things slowly started to dawn on me. It might be unfair, but I couldn't help but compare my experience to Pokemon. Legends EA was just around the corner after all, so it was on my mind. And yeah, I'm used to comparing Pokemon to its contemporaries, and like I said, Pokemon doesn't always match their standards. I'm used to that, but this time, it was really different. Everything. All of it. Every single thing I've brought up already suddenly came crashing down on me, and I realized I don't want to play Legends EA. I do want to play Digimon. In fact, the state of Pokemon these days is in such disarray that I don't think we can keep ignoring Pokemon's subpar standards. Their graphics lack personality, their gameplay is a weird stitched-together mess, their worlds aren't fun to explore, and worst of all, their business practices have gotten so scummy. I know this intro has been pretty long-winded, but I wanted to break down everything the Pokemon Company has done that I'm disappointed with, and explain why I think it's important we get more vocal about these issues. Enough rambling, I suppose. Let's unpack the ways Pokemon has become a disappointment. I already mentioned it, Pokemon games are ugly compared to its competition, but I do want to clarify what I really mean with this section. Usually, I'm actually not really much of a graphics snob. Yeah, God of War and Resident Evil 4 Remake are really pretty and have hyper mega graphics and they're really pretty and beautiful, which, you know, whatever. But I'm also happy with games that don't look hyper real. I really value the style of the visuals. Like, we can trim away all these polygons and deliver some stunning, gorgeous work with pixel art. Deltarune and Drawn to Life in particular really stand out to me in terms of really expressive, beautiful, fun pixel art styles. I'm also very in love with the old clunky visuals from N64 era, like Banjo-Kazooie, Ocarina of Time. I live for this. Look at how good these games look. Oh my god, it's so pretty. So yeah, when I'm talking about the Pokemon graphics being ugly, I don't mean I want to be able to see each individual eyelash on my trainer's face or whatever. What I mean is how well they play with their style. It didn't just take Pokemon a long time to start using 3D for their mainline games. The whole transition was clearly a struggle for them, and they still, after all these years, haven't really figured it out yet. A specific talking point I see a lot is how the new 3D models for Pokemon are oddly desaturated compared to their old pixel art styles. And I think it's actually a side effect of the fact everything in Pokemon has this sort of plasticky sheen to it. Everything looks like a toy. Yeah, there might be a texture like hair, fur, bread, that whole disasteroid of a gimmick. But you can clearly see that attempt to show hair is just painted on texture, because the whole unit shines like plastic. I don't know why Pokemon does this. Nintendo as a whole kind of does this in general too. Despite having games with really distinct cartoon-like styles, they insist on using this lighting and shading engine that's based more on realistic lighting. The first time I remember really noticing how odd this looks was when the Wind Waker HD version came out. It's the same game, but now everything has soft shading instead of cell shading, and honestly, I think it makes the world feel like plastic. When you're working with something that has such a specific style, in order to match the aesthetic of your world, it's often better to use a specialized shader. And this is super common. Games have had cartoon or anime styles for ages. Cell shading just generally looks better with it. Heck, even my Modica Magica app game for my phone can manage to do this. So why does Pokemon and Nintendo insist on doing this? The worst thing is it makes the games look cheaper. Even the few times they've tried to attempt cell shading, like with Legends Arceus, there's still this sort of clumsiness to it all. Aside from the lighting, the more pressing issue I'd say is the fact that Pokemon, don't friggin' move. Every Pokemon gets 2 animations for battle. One where they stand still and growl a little bit, and one where they shimmy forward a little bit. They don't really move around, and a lot of moves don't even use either of these animations. A lot of moves will just have the Pokemon model squirm or jump up and down a bit without changing them out of their idle pose. And by the way, their idle poses suck. Basically, every Pokemon stands so still that you might as well just be a still image. I would say, visually, the most important thing in a game like Pokemon is the animation during battles, because that's the main thing you're doing in the game. If the battles look boring, if they don't engage you or make you excited to battle the next trainer, then it'll be easier for you to just give up on the game, become bored. This is the main gameplay, and if that isn't fun to watch, what's the point? If you're not having fun watching the battles you're participating in, what else are you going to do? It's not like there's contests anymore either. What the hell happened to that, by the way? Huh? Gen 3 introduced contests, and then they stuck around through Gens 4, and then Gen 5 got rid of them, but replaced them with Pokestar Studios and the musical theater. But then once they hit 3D in Gen 6, it's just gone. There's no side quests or mini-games or anything. It's just battles. And the battles have never looked more boring. Especially with these open world style Pokemon games. Because the camera is pulled so far, the Pokemon and the animations are tiny. And the camera often doesn't move to a fixed position either. So even if I'm not running around dodging attacks like in Legends Arceus, I'm often putting the camera in a spot that doesn't help show off the movements the Pokemon even have. The fixed camera can do so much for a turn-based RPG. With every single attack the Digimon have in Time Stranger, we show off their attacks in a way that makes the Mon look cool. Even seeing the same animation over and over again, the attack is punchy, so it doesn't take too long, like how the boring, ugly Z moves always did. And remember how I said way back in 2013, Yokai Watch had their little monsters do a victory dance at the end of the fight? Well, guess what? The Digimon that delivers the final blow also gets a special little victory animation. Unique animation for every different Mon. The lackluster battle animation is the most pressing issue. But it's not the only example of this. Littered all over the place are ways you can see how Pokemon's visuals fall short. I mean, hell, even Pokemon's menus have gotten basic and boring looking. You might think a menu is a stupid small detail to get hung up on, but you're going to be staring at these menus just as often as you will the battle animations. Digimon's menu seems straightforward, but it's that slight digital hologram-like element. It's just a nice extra touch. It gives it some life, you know? The Persona games are phenomenal with their menus. Persona 5 alone has basically changed the game with its flashy, bright, animated visuals for its menus. Pokemon? Just a gray square. That's it. Maybe it'll glow a little if you terrestrialize, but that's it. Just gray squares, white or gray squares. Pokemon used to have really stunning menus too. Between Kalos, Alola, and the Hoenn remakes, the designs of the health bars and the battle buttons all changed. And it was a cool little addition. It was nice. But now, just gray squares. A UI that's been simplified so much it's almost clinical feeling. It has so little personal flair, it just feels like a placeholder asset. Every single thing in these games have no visual impact because it feels like they're doing the bare minimum. It's tangent time. I am unscripted, I have my coffee, and I have thoughts in my head, and I just need to get them out of me, otherwise they'll eat me alive. Really the reason I have a YouTube channel, honestly. Legends EA is one of the most hand-holdy games I've ever played. And Pokemon has been, like, notoriously bad with its tutorials being very, like, cutscene heavy and hand-holdy. The worst was Sun and Moon. The Alola games are absolutely terrible to replay because the entire first island is one big tutorial and I really hate it. It holds your hand and forces you to go so slowly with endless cutscenes and it just takes forever. But this one is also, this is like a close second. This was bad, like just non-stop cutscenes and cutscenes and cutscenes. And it is the thing, it's my least favorite thing in video gaming. I call it cutscene gameplay where like Urbane is standing there and he's talking for forever, and then he's like, let's go, and then he moves, and then I get control of my character again, and I move forward 3 steps, and then we just enter another cutscene, and he goes back to talking, and Pokemon is lousy with this. It's been for a long time, but it's so bad, and especially the beginning of Legends EA. It's one of the worst tutorials I've ever had to sit through, and I think it's because they insist on having everything be like an in-universe explanation. Like, I can't just run around the city and run into like a battle zone or a wild area or the rocks, which I don't have any footage of me breaking the rocks because I did not care. But I can't just like run around and interact with it and have like a blurb pop up, you know, to be like, this is what this is. Or like have Urbane run around with me, and if I run into it, activate like a little like speech bubble to be like, this is what that is. We have to like slow things down and do like a whole cutscene around it, where he drags me around everywhere and I can't play the game. And it wouldn't be so egregious. There's also so many loading screens in this game. How often the screen just fades to black is insane. And I don't usually mind loading screens, you know, unless it's like something really egregious like Sonic 06, but this teeters on it. And the worst example, this is the worst mission in the entire game. I want, oh my goodness. It's the Froakie one. I tried. I really tried. You have like 50 seconds to get through the last of their 3 like little playground challenges, whatever, and it's impossible. And I was so upset and angry. The game doesn't control very well for you to be doing parkour like this in the first place, and I never finished it. It just pissed me off. But the thing that really annoyed me was if I goofed up. If the moment you goof up, you've basically failed, because you can't get to the end without doing it perfectly. So if I would goof up, and I would go and talk to the guy, and then he'd be like, oh, you're giving up? And there's no option to just, like, restart the mission. I have to give up. So then we fade to black, and then we fade back in, and he's like, well, you could always come back and try again later. And then I talk to him, and then he goes, so you want to try the mission again? And I go, yes. And then we fade to black, and then we fade back in, and we have to do this whole same cutscene of, like, going around the area to show it off, and then we fade to black again, and then we fade back from black, and now I can start doing the mission. And if you fail, there's no like why can't I just automatically retry? Why does it always have to go and reset and show me the same little cutscene every time, and so many like fades to black? It's just annoying. Now that you know about my gripes with the general aesthetics and visuals of the recent Pokemon games, I don't need to bog down this section with my thoughts on how the world looks, because I want to focus on what exploring the world feels like. Every single Pokemon game starts basically the same way. Hello, I'm the Pokemon Professor. Welcome to the world of Pokemon. In this introduction, the professors regale us about how the Pokemon are so intrinsically tied to the people and environments around us. They always end their speech on the idea of trainers who battle to get badges, but they also point out how many people just live in harmony with their Pokemon too. And that's really cool. So, where are all the Pokemon? This isn't even a new thing either. This has been true ever since the very beginning. Despite promising us a world of people and Pokemon, the towns don't actually have a whole lot of Pokemon just hanging around. Sure, you might see a couple of them here or there if you enter people's houses, but for the life of me, it seems like the only place where you'd be overwhelmed with Pokemon around you were the fan clubs. Whether it's normal civilians or other trainers, no one just has their Pokemon chilling outside of their Pokeballs. And it makes the world feel a lot emptier, or at the very least, a lot more boring. Take one look at the anime, new or old. The Rising Volt Tacklers have so many Pokemon just chilling around them all the time. Every time Ash and friends roll into a new city, they're surrounded by Pokemon. A fantastic example is the Detective Pikachu movie. There's Pokemon crammed into every little nook and cranny. It makes the world feel alive and magical and different. And then you boot up one of the games and it's empty. It's even more egregious now that they've started showing Pokemon in the wild. Ironically, when they were random encounters in the grass, it made the forests feel much more alive. Like you could easily envision Pokemon always surrounding you, and you could trip into one at any point in time. Now that we've been given open worlds where we can see the Pokemon roaming around, meh. Like I can see there's only 5 of them. I could just run around them, actually. Not only does this method they keep insisting on using for their games make the world feel less inhabited, it also highlights how empty the actual world is. Like, there's nothing to see here. Giant sprawling landscapes with absolutely nothing new to see or do. A massive problem I've had for quite a long time is the lack of interesting landmarks in Pokemon. In the older games, I could kinda forgive it a bit more. The towns are supposed to be the interesting parts you come across, I suppose. But with Legends Arceus or Scarlet and Violet, it doesn't work. Legends Arceus barely has civilizations to visit, and Scarlet and Violet don't have anything in the towns to do. You can't enter buildings. I already talked about how they've stripped away all the side content, like contests and things. And besides, if you're giving your audience an open world game, you're setting this expectation that exploring this world will be the fun part, but it isn't. In the beginning of the video, I said I don't like open world games, and in general that's true, but even open world games I don't like can still deliver on giving me something to explore. Breath of the Wild is a perfect example. There's all kinds of cool things to find. The 3 whale skeletons is so friggin' cool. It blew my mind the first time I stumbled upon one of them. The giant statue, the 8th heroine, later finding her giant sword somewhere else, immediately your mind starts going, well, how did this happen? Theory mode activates and it makes the world feel alive. Just running around, doing whatever. And the first time I spotted a dragon on the horizon, I didn't know dragons would be in the game and my mind exploded. Even though this is a gameplay style I don't typically enjoy, I can still feel that thrill of finding something cool and interesting while running around. And it's soul-crushing. Pokemon never have anything like this. Pokemon is a franchise with crazy amounts of lore. Friggin' Pokedex entries alone implies a lot of world building that could be super interesting to see, but they never do. A huge feature for Legends EA I keep seeing people gushing over is the character customization and the ability to pose and take pictures. Yeah, that's cute, but wouldn't it be more fun if you could use that camera to pose in front of actually interesting landmarks? Hell, take a look at Pokemon Snap. Pokemon living in the wild, rather than just have Pokemon stand around weirdly in the wild. Let them be doing something. And I know you might be thinking, well, that's just absurd. You're setting your expectations too high. No, because bam, look at Central Town. After a while in Digimon Time Stranger, you make it to the digital world and the first thing you see is this amazing, sprawling city. And okay, yes, I know, the Switch runs like garbage. Okay, the Switch struggles to load Animal Crossing if there's too many flowers. I know my Steam Deck is a lot more powerful than my Switch, but also, let's be real, it's not my fault Nintendo has decided to ignore what the gaming standards are for the rest of the world. Yes, the fact your console is also portable sure is a neat gimmick, but is it really that impressive when it runs at the same processing power as a PlayStation 2? Anyways, look! there's Digimon everywhere. Like, running around to do missions, or even just exploring to see what's all going on, there's something in every little nook and cranny all over the place. Not just this town, there's a couple of other different Digimon cities you can visit. There's so many little details that breathe life into the game, and I think we take these things for granted, especially Pokemon. I saw a post on Twitter talking about how they hoped we would be able to enter the clothing stores in Legends ZA, like how we used to. And someone was arguing, well, what's the point? Waste 30 seconds in the shop to get to a menu? Just start with the menu. And that mentality is kind of at the center of how we've allowed Pokemon to get away with these sort of standards. Oh, I'm sorry. Is walking across the store for 30 seconds really that egregious? Talking with potential NPCs doesn't interest you? The differences between stores highlighting the different areas you're in? These little details that people would likely ignore or overlook. The Pokemon Company is getting more and more comfortable just cutting them out entirely. One of my favorite YouTubers, Annie Austin, literally has tons of videos going over how little, often unappreciated detail goes into making a world look real. When you get rid of enough of those smaller details, or just replace them with a menu, you slowly start getting used to the idea of omitting the bigger details too. What, should every gym just be a blank battlefield? After all, you just walk across it for a few seconds to enter a battle, right? Oh, should battles just go back to being empty blank voids? I assumed you would appreciate the subtle changes to the environment around the battles to keep in line with where your character actually is in-game. But hey, let's just get to the menu, right? Let's streamline things just to get back to our menus. Because that's what's important, right? Might as well just be playing a friggin' text adventure. You want the whole game to look like the forest level from Nier? No, I bet not. No one likes that level, and you know it. But exploring these worlds doesn't just begin and end with having cool things to look at. How you explore is also part of the fun. Pokemon has always had two consistencies: HM moves to help your trainer get around certain obstacles, and your bike. The HM moves used to have you giving them to your Pokemon, but unfortunately they got rid of HMs before you could actually visually see you riding any of your Pokemon while surfing, the only exception being a few select Pokemon in the Gen 6 era of the games. During that time, they introduced the idea of ride Pokemon. OMG, this will be just like that one cool episode of the anime, where everyone rode on their Pokemon in different unique ways? No, not really. Instead, you can, once again, only ride on certain select few Pokemon scattered around the world. In Gen 7, they replaced HMs with ride Pokemon, but again, they're not your specific Mons, but at least you could see your character riding on them. Well, then they immediately dropped that gimmick too with Gen 8. You don't see the flying taxis carrying you around, and everything else is just done with your bike. Your ugly-ass orange bike. I hate this thing. Pokemon's always been slow with allowing customization, but the fact our bike and bike outfits have still super limited options is so annoying to me. But I guess it doesn't matter. We got rid of all of that and replaced it with your dinosaur bike in Gen 9. Hooray! We have slowly gotten further and further away from being in a world where the Pokemon we choose to catch and train might be represented in any way visually. Unless we stop the adventure to do a picnic or make curry or give them a Pokepuff or whatever, during the actual adventuring part of the game, nothing. Oh, but we used to. Oh, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Good old days. This was a game changer, because for the first time, your Pokemon would actually follow around behind you. Everyone loved it. Everyone was so in love with this, and you can tell because people are still clamoring for Nintendo to do that again. And Nintendo, like always, just kind of ignores everyone. But no, having the sprites of Pokemon actually following you around was such an incredibly charming aspect. Turning around to interact with them was so fun. They do so much weird little things, and it just made your team feel more personal. It's easy to get lost in the numbers of it all, right? The EVs and the IVs, the numbers to win, but not everyone plays the games like they're a math test that needs to be solved as soon as possible. A lot of players like to take their time and enjoy the adventure. And I love playing Pokemon over and over with new teams, getting attached to the Pokemon I'm training, and this level of interactivity and immersion meant the world to me. So it sucks that they just gave up on the entire idea. Nintendo has finally figured out people really want this, and they've executed this concept relatively fine in things like Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu. They famously tried implementing a pathetic attempt of the following mechanic in some of their new games. Scarlet and Violet aren't great either. No one likes evolving Bramblin, or Rellor, or Pawmot, because they rely on you traveling a certain amount of steps with them, and the following sucks in these games. Every Pokemon moves way slower than your player's average speed, so you have to do this weird half-step thing because running happens automatically, and it kills the momentum and generally is just not fun. And with how the camera is placed, your Pokemon is often way too far behind you to even see the thing following you. It's a perfect example of the level of effort Nintendo puts into these games. They know fans want this, so they throw it in the last second, and it's not well implemented, doesn't really work, and yet fans gobble it up because it's almost what they asked for. And there should truly be no excuse, because Digimon Time Stranger Stories absolutely destroys Nintendo in every single regard here. Not only does my Digimon partner follow me around, but it's the first 3 Digimon in my party that follow me at the same time, and there's often an extra Digimon helping me, and I have my girlfriend who's tagging along, and her partner Digimon too. There's at least 5 characters running around with me while I'm playing the game, and they all fit on screen and can keep up with my character, and I can stop to talk to them too. And if all that isn't impressive enough, I can ride some of them. Not just some random extra Pokemon I rent to act as an HM replacement or whatever. The actual Digimon I trained and befriended. Now they can carry me around. Whee! Look at me go! Yeah! I just love being in this world, running around, seeing all the neat details with the random NPCs or the stunning environments, having my team with me, and feeling like a real party on a fun adventure. In Pokemon, I feel alone and lost in a cold, empty world. So I was capturing footage of the older games for this video, you know, and I got to Legends Arceus, and I was blown away at how, like, actually pretty it is. It's not, like, amazing, but especially compared to Scarlet Violet and Legends EA, it's really nice. Sword and Shield also looks really nice. Like, as I was going backwards, they look better and better. And if I legitimately didn't know any better, I would think the older games were the newer ones, just based on how, like, nice and polished and detailed they are. And I know, like, everyone is making fun of, like, the flat, you know, like, pixels on the walls rather than, like, actually making a balcony or anything. And I think it's gotten, like, the Pokemon community gets hung up on a bunch of stupid things all the time. People still talk about the trees from Sword and Shield. But no, I think people get really hung up on, like, stupid, goofy details when it comes to the animation and stuff. My biggest hang up with Legends EA is how boring the city looks. Like, it doesn't, it looks like Gary's Mod, right? It looks like I'm running around in Gary's Mod. This looks like a weird indie game. When we first heard that we would be stuck in just Lumio City, I was a little concerned because I'm like, I don't know how much, like, visual variety we can have, but I want it to be hopeful. You can do that, but it's just so boring. And the thing is, you could plop me anywhere in that map and I would have no earthly idea where I was. There's no interesting landmarks, it's all the same looking. And I was disappointed because there's like 5 sections and they're all named after colors. They're the French words for the colors. And I was like, we could do something really easy with that. Like, if you're in the vert means green. If we're in that district, just have, like, way more vegetation on all the buildings and stuff. Kind of like how the hotel looks with all the vines and ivy. Just more potted plants and, like, trees and vegetation just to give it that green feeling. Then let's say if you get to the red one, have it be, like, older buildings and have it be made out of, like, red brick and stuff. And we could do something cool with that. Maybe have, like, older, like steam or gas-powered stuff. And then with the yellow one, that one could be, like, the technologically advanced section, where it could have, like, a lot more of the, like, the hologram stuff that we see throughout the game. You know, just something. Like, if you have it's a small map, and I'm disappointed they didn't go any distance towards making it look visually distinct or interesting. It all looks the same. So now that I've finally covered everything about the game from a design and visual perspective, I can finally talk about what it's like from a gameplay perspective. What, it only took me like 20 minutes or something, I think? Obviously, with newer games, Pokemon has steered further and further away from their traditional turn-based RPG style, rather than getting the iconic and being teleported to a field for our battle, they've tried more and more to have the battles take place in their overworld. A concept I can kind of understand the appeal behind. Personally, I really love the aesthetics of the specifically sectioned off areas designed for battles. I totally see why people wanted to be more immersed in the overworld. There was always a weird disconnect when you're battling on the water and your Graveler is just weirdly floating above it somehow or whatever. However, there are definitely times where they don't take everything into consideration. In Scarlet and Violet, you can get caught in a narrow path with 1,000 Pokemon spawning and get stuck bouncing between them all. In Legends ZA, Pokemon keep falling off the rooftops. Whenever there is an obstacle in the way, the Pokemon aren't really designed to handle it very well, which is probably a big part of why the environments have gotten so vast and empty, trying to avoid weird moments like that as best they can. Every area has to be designed with the idea of a huge sprawling battle taking place at any point in time. Clearly, Game Freak is still going through some growing pains trying to figure out the best way to incorporate this more open world battle system. But this isn't really anything new. Game Freak constantly changes the way their games actually work. In fact, basically every single time they introduce a new system to the game, they'll drop it or change it sometime in the future. Generation 2, they introduce the day-night system. Well, nowadays, the time of day will just change automatically for story reasons, like with Sword and Shield, or the days and nights pass on a minute-to-minute basis, rather than being aligned with your game's internal clock. I guess it's more convenient when evolving certain Pokemon, but also, I kind of feel like I'm not contributing very much to my adventure. In Gen 3, we introduce contests. Then, we get rid of them. And the remakes, they have this really cool, in-depth Pokemon scanning system to help you find interesting or rare Pokemon. Oh well, we'll get rid of that immediately too. Remember the Poketch? Well, that doesn't matter, because it's not around anymore. Just like the Underground. Hey, do you hate how you have to go through the entire tutorial before you can start to customize your character's hair color and texture? Well, in Scarlet and Violet, we fixed it for you. Now you can just start your adventure looking like you. Oh, guess what? We got rid of that again in Legends ZA. Ride Pokemon came and went, HMs are gone, they let you customize your character's outfit, and then they got rid of that for the very next game, then they brought it back, just to basically get rid of it again in Scarlet and Violet. Z-moves, Dynamaxing, they keep coming up with some dumb gimmick, then throwing it away with the next generation. I get wanting to continually innovate and improve, but at this point it doesn't feel like innovation, it just feels like a cheap gimmick. And I'd definitely not call any of them improvements, because despite introducing these new fighting gimmicks, they always incorporate them in the lamest ways possible. No one Mega evolved in X and Y. Only certain bosses. Only the Kahunas and the villains use Z-moves. Only the gym leaders use Dynamaxing, and it was always on their last Pokemon. The same exact thing was true with Terrestrializing. They always saved it for their ace, which they always used last. Like, that's half of why Geeta is considered a bad champion. Glamora is a setup Pokemon, and you wait for the end of the battle because, ooh, shiny rocks for the big finale. It's not just these things either. Cast form, you think it would get cool new forms with the different arena-affecting moves? But no, we've basically axed evolution through stones entirely. On that note, they've stopped coming up with new evolutions. In Legends Arceus, they got rid of the trading mechanic, and if you thought that was convenient, guess what? They got rid of it again in Legends ZA. I just remembered, double battles don't really exist anymore, except for specific examples, and usually you're paired with your stupid rival, so it's not even a real double battle with your Pokemon. Triple battles used to exist. Do you remember rotation battles? None of these things exist anymore. And I see a lot of arguments of like, oh, it's done this way because now it's more convenient. Like the day-night cycle. It's convenient. But at some point we have to ask, is being convenient the most important part? If I could just feed my Pokemon unlimited rare candies and win any fight instantly, is that even fun? Like, I don't play games for them to be easy. I want a challenge. I want to feel engaged and put in effort and strategy. Because if it's too easy, I might as well just play one of those dumb AFK app games. We're so used to the Pokemon Company throwing away random gameplay things that should not be a question, to the point we literally didn't even know if we could customize our characters for Legends EA. Once there was finally a trailer showing off the customization options, people were losing their minds. OMG, it's back! And I feel like I'm on crazy pills, because I was thinking, this shouldn't be a big celebration, this should just be the standard. I keep seeing people pissing themselves over something that looks worse than what we got on GameCube. Pokemon Company still can't even incorporate voice acting or sound effects to their cutscenes. Normally, I wouldn't care, but they keep insisting on grinding everything to a halt to focus on their stories, and the lack of actual human sounds just takes me out of it. Again, this is the bare minimum, the basic standard, and Pokemon can't even be bothered to do this? Like, look, you think this is- tell me you think this is good. You can't. Shiny hunting has become a joke. It's now expected you'll catch at least one shiny with every new game, because the way they work with the overworld, it's so easy to farm them now. Shinies used to be something you could feel proud of. It was an event. Now, meh. Everyone has like 8 of them laying around somewhere. And I know I'm really teetering towards old man yells at cloud territory, blinded by nostalgia and whatnot, and I'm not opposed to new innovations and stuff. Pokemon just doesn't seem to know how to transition their old stuff and make it new. Their old games were top-down, so you could easily explore forests and caves and whatnot. Now that the camera is always positioned behind the character, the environments aren't always as easy to read. Finding a twisting path or piecing together a sliding puzzle isn't as easy, but it is still possible. Digimon Time Strangers has similar puzzles and gimmicks even with the camera positioned behind your character, so why can't Game Freak do it nowadays? Black and White popped off, and a lot of people had praise, especially for the story. Later on, other story-rich moments like the post-game for X and Y or Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire similarly got a lot of praise. I think Pokemon Company wants to prioritize their stories, and in doing so has kinda let their gameplay fall to the wayside. Which is also inexcusable. Digimon is also a very story-driven game, but it still manages to keep the gameplay around the story exciting and engaging. And they don't even need Mega Evolutions or Z-moves or whatever the fuck to do so. Battling is just fun in this game. Battling feels like a chore in Pokemon nowadays. Catching Pokemon is so easy. They just hand you legendaries. No trainer is too much of a challenge because they don't use the region's gimmick to win. Or, more often than not, they don't even have more than 3 Pokemon on them anyways. You can easily destroy any gym just through the fact of having a full team of 6 Pokemon. But it's because they don't want to interrupt the flow of their precious story, so every challenge is super easy. I mean, hell, in Legends EA, the whole gimmick is going through the ranks, starting at Z and making it to A, but they have you skip from V to F? That's more than half the friggin' alphabet. Oh, what? You want to play through 15 boring battles? Well, why can't those battles just be fun? Why do we assume they would have been boring? Yeah, 26 cool battles should be the fun part of the game whose whole system is built around Pokemon battling? If battling sounds like the boring part that you'd want to skip over, then what the hell is even the point of playing the game? And I don't want to hear any excuses of, oh, but it's made for kids, because you know that's bullshit. First of all, kids also enjoy challenging games. Kids don't want to just be handed a trophy willy-nilly. They're smart and they can handle puzzles and strategy. We all did. We adults who play the games now, those old school games, they didn't hand you the victory, but we're still playing them. And second, people have been begging Game Freak for a difficulty setting for decades. The Pokemon Company is well aware a huge chunk of their fanbase are adults. Every single trailer for Pokemon is us going through the decades of the game system's evolution. Pokemon games aren't rated C for children, they're E for everyone. Adding difficulty options is not a hard thing to implement, but Game Freak and Nintendo have proven time and again their priorities aren't ever actually on improving their games. Throughout this video, I have compared Pokemon to a lot of different games. Wildly different games from different publishers. AAA stuff, indie stuff, old, new. I have really put Pokemon through the ringer here. And you might think that's not fair. It's not fair to compare every single thing that has some sort of creature collector gimmick to Pokemon. After all, the rest of these games around that mechanic are wildly different. Okay. So let me show you something. These are my assortment of Pokemon games I have physical copies for. If we turn all of them around, on the back we'll see a red guy, a green guy, and a blue guy. Every single time. Red guy, green guy, blue guy. Red guy, green, blue. Red, green, blue. They're the starters. A staple of the Pokemon franchise. Makes sense they'd be featured on the box art. Okay, now this is my physical copy of Yokai Watch, another creature collector. If I turn this one around, oh, well look at that. There's a red guy, a green guy, and a blue guy. How odd! If you've played Yokai Watch, you know there's no starter to choose from. The first yokai you catch is always Caden, and I love him. And yet, they still chose to feature these 3 yokai for a reason on their box art. Here's my physical copy of Dragon Quest Monster Joker 2. Its name is a mouthful. Turn it around. Red guy, green guy, blue guy. Technically, Slimestack is one creature, but if you didn't know any better, you might not think that. They could have featured any of their monsters on the box, but they chose to pick the one that follows this color gimmick. I guarantee you, a lot of creature collectors feature somewhere in their promotional work or box art a red, blue, and green creature, or at least prominently displaying 3 creatures up at front, whether they're your starters or not. It's because Pokemon does this. The marketing team is mimicking the style of Pokemon to make you think they're similar, so you're more likely to buy it. Pokemon set the standard, so everyone feels compelled to mimic what they do to try to reach that standard. But it doesn't end there. If you think it's unfair to compare Pokemon's games to every other creature collector there is, well guess what? Every single creature collector automatically gets compared to Pokemon all the time anyways. It doesn't matter what they do, it doesn't matter how unique their gameplay system is, it doesn't matter how different they are, people constantly compare them to Pokemon. They always get described as Pokemon, but with blank. And it's not surprising either. Pokemon is legitimately the biggest franchise in the world. It's been this way for years. A total estimated revenue, at least by the time I'm writing this, at a $113.7 billion. For context, second place is Mickey Mouse and Friends, with a little more than half that number at $61.2 billion. So yeah, I don't feel bad comparing Pokemon's graphics, gameplay, and world building to anyone else, especially Digimon, because they should have the money to blow everyone out of the water. Yeah, asking them to add things like actual animations to all the 1,000 different Pokemon, or asking them to add new ways of customizing your Pokemon, or even little things like changing your body type for your trainer. Would that be extra effort? Absolutely. But hey, they can afford to add that extra effort. They can afford to hire tons more animators and game programmers. They can afford to wait more than 1 year to frantically push out the next game too. They could even afford to make actual spin-off games again. Remember those? Mystery Dungeon, Stadium, Coliseum Conquest, all kind of fun spin-off things. Oh well, now all we get is their dumb app games that suck and I hate them. With how much money Nintendo and the Pokemon Company makes, there shouldn't be any comparison between their products and their contemporaries. They are so used to setting the standard all other games strive to achieve that now I think they've gotten complacent. They've learned they can deliver a subpar game with half of the old mechanics missing from it, and the fans will gobble it up gleefully. They're announcing $30 DLC for Legends EA before the game even dropped. $113.7 billion, and yet they're still charging us $70+ for their new game. Hell, they're still charging $60 for their old crap. Even Switch games. They never lower their prices for anything. It's cause they know they can keep things that way and their fans will begrudgingly pay for a 10-year-old game at full price. Because they've been doing it, and they know they can get away with it. $113.7 billion, but they still can't re-release their old Pokemon games? They have the online design games for outdated systems, including Game Boy and Advanced, but they refuse to put Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald back out. Why? Well, so when they ever do another remake with our plasticky graphics, like Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu or Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, they're your only options. You still have to give them $60 to $70 if you want to play your childhood favorites, though. What's worse is they're the most aggressive when it comes to shutting down fan-made ROMs or emulators for these old systems. A passion project fans are making out of love? Gone. If Pokemon Company can't make a profit, then your fan ROM doesn't deserve to exist. They won't release their old games that are only available on outdated systems that could cost well over hundreds of dollars, so people feel like emulating is their only option, but Pokemon Company won't even let those versions exist. $113.7 billion, but rather than strive towards giving the fans what they want, they just shut down the fans instead. Rather than moving towards improving their games so they can compare to the much higher standards their competition is setting, Pokemon Company decides to take all that money and sue their competition. Enter Pal World, another indie creature collector that, just like the others, instantly got compared to Pokemon. However, there was a little bit more to it, where people were really suspicious of how a lot of their pals' designs teetered a little too close to resembling Pokemon designs. Not all of them. In fact, plenty seemed pretty original, and others I think people were kind of stretching. Like, I saw people compare this large yellow fella to both Pikachu and Electivire. I don't really see it. If anything, it's just Totoro, actually. Did they deserve to be sued? I don't think so. I think slapping them with a cease and desist and making them change their designs would have been enough. But no. Pokemon and Nintendo have seemingly decided Pal World is their arch nemesis or something because they've been trying to sue them over patent infringement. This is different from copyright infringement, which is what stealing the designs would have covered. Pokemon and Nintendo are trying to sue Pal World over their mechanics, from things like catching creatures in balls and riding on top of your creature, both of which are so egregious things to try to claim as your own. This reminds me of that time the React channel tried to trademark the word react. It's that level of dumb and petty. Catching things in spheres? At first I thought it made sense. Pokeballs are iconic, I suppose, but I looked at the Pal World Pal spheres and they look completely different. But remember, it's not about how it looks, because it's not copyright infringement. It's how it plays. Pokemon is trying to patent the concept of collecting creatures. Yeah, for now their legalese defines it as catching creatures in ball-like items, but how much wiggle room does that allow for? How would that terminology stretch to affect others? The Yokai Watch. It's not a sphere, but it is circular in a way. Would that count? If it's not just about the visuals of the mechanic, then that means any creature collector that involves the creature being contained within something might fall under this definition. Oh, Persona gets sued because they're contained in the cards. Oops, Dragon Quest Monster Joker gets sued because they're contained in a PC. Digimon gets sued because they're contained in their kinda sphere-shaped egg-like Digivices. The much more scummy one of the deal is the riding on creature element. Fuck you, Nintendo. Tons of creature collectors involve you riding on your creatures. And heck, Nintendo have changed their gameplay with this mechanic so much that you don't even ride on your own Pokemon anymore. This mechanic has existed for decades, and Pokemon only cares now because they got an itch up their ass about Pal World. They're more willing to put their time and money towards potentially hurting the entire creature collector sphere to spite one company, rather than put any of that effort towards improving their own games that shrink further and further into being lackluster, ugly, and disappointing. Too lazy to actually improve their standards, so instead, let's just sue the rest of the competition out of the picture. You, the paying customer, shouldn't get the choice of having better games to play. Pokemon would rather take out your choices, so you're stuck with their overpriced mediocrity. I can't believe how abhorrently scummy Nintendo and the Pokemon Pokemon Company have gotten in recent years. It's so disappointing. That's why I felt compelled to make this whole big dumb video, because they should do better. They can do better. They can afford to do better. But they know they can get away with it. And we, as audience members, keep proving that to be true. We keep buying their games and merch and all that crap. We keep pouring them truckloads of money, proving that they can fall far below the standards they used to set and still be financially successful. We need to start holding them accountable, start demanding they improve their own works, and also show how we don't want to support a company who's using their billions to attack much smaller developers. Believe me, I love Pokemon with all my heart. Nintendo has always been my favorite developers, but I think I've also proven there's plenty of other options out there. Better options. And I want Nintendo to realize that too. Real talk. I was planning on playing the game a little bit more. I was like, I'll play a little bit more, maybe I'll rank up again, just to like have more footage of like more into the game, you know? And I just couldn't. Like the last section I recorded of me running around, my intention was I was going to be doing something. Like I was like, maybe I'll battle, maybe I'll catch Pokemon, and as I'm just running around this empty, boring city, in my heart, I was like, I just don't want to be playing this. It's so boring, and that sucks. And it sucks and it's disappointing. Like, everything gameplay-wise is so boring to me. The missions got really repetitive really quickly, which really disappointed me, because at first I'm like, this is the coolest thing. This is like, the missions sound like the misadventures Ash would get into in the anime, you know? But very quickly, they just became the same thing. It's either, can you fight this Pokemon, and then you battle, or I see a Pokemon, and if you've caught it, you show it to them, or walk a little bit of a distance. Just walk from spot A to spot B. Nothing's in your path, just walk. And it's terrible. And I think the thing that really got me, because in Digimon there's like side missions too, and they're similarly like you just, you go from point A to point B, or you fight something. But I think that at the core of it, the thing that makes it feel different is the missions are so like boring. Like, the people are asking for boring, lame things that aren't interesting. Like, it's just like, I like this Pokemon. Can I see this Pokemon? Then you show it, and like, yay, Pokemon. Like, in Digimon, they're talking about, like, I'm worried someone's gonna get hurt, or this is something really serious and interesting, and you feel pressured to do it. And in Pokemon, everything's so languid, and it makes it so hard to care. And then, battling isn't fun either, and that was the thing that I was the most worried about. It just feels like a button masher. Like, all the strategy of Pokemon that I know is gone. Abilities aren't in the game anymore. I tried doing type matchups, and that didn't really even seem to, like, affect anything, really. It's just how fast you can smash your buttons. All 4 of your buttons in a row, because then you wait for the next one to charge. So by going through all 4, the first one you hit would have charged, and I just felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again. It didn't matter which Pokemon I was using. The type matchups felt completely negligible. And maybe it gets better, like, later in the game, but at the time, like, in this early game stuff, there's nothing engaging. There's nothing fun about battling in this game. And the annoying thing is, like, the most interesting idea is, like, the stage hazard idea. That seems cool, but it's so clunky. Like, your Pokemon don't really follow you, like, well enough. It's just a not fun game. It's not fun to play. That's the hardest thing. Like, I really wanted to give it a shot, but it just bored me. I couldn't bring myself to keep playing. And the thing is, with Digimon, I couldn't stop. Like, I can't stop. I'm still playing Digimon. Like, me making videos is the only thing dragging me away from Digimon. It's addictive, and Pokemon is boring. I know there's going to be people who adamantly disagree with me here. I mean, hell, my boyfriend is the one who bought the game, and he's been loving it. And I've seen plenty of other people online also loving it. And that's great. The last thing I want to do is try to tell you to stop having fun. But I hope Even if you truly do enjoy the game, you can understand why I and many others have gotten to the point where we want to voice our concerns. Like, you've heard everything I've had to say. I'm not some idiot crying about, oh, the game is stupid and I hate it because it's not like Battlefield or whatever. These are legitimate criticisms, both of the quality of the games and the company making them. Pokemon is massive. It's incredibly influential. That's why I'm so passionate about seeing its standards of quality sinking more and more in recent years. Not only can the Pokemon Company afford to care, they know how impactful their games have been on generations of people. They were the ones setting the standards. They were the ones everyone else was copying. And now, well, Digimon has finally beaten Pokemon. At least in my eyes. I think Pokemon's kinda just lost their sense of identity. I don't feel much personal pizzazz. I don't think they're pushing their limits very much. This is why I think the new Megas are very bland. They don't really want to change much about their designs. This is why I think there hasn't been a new evolution since X and Y. The brand of Pokemon has gotten so big, they want to maintain a certain squeaky clean image, a consistent and easily marketable style. And while I understand why a company would want to lean into the certainty of a consistent style, I think it's unfortunately been a hindrance on the evolution of Pokemon. And it bums me out because Pokemon used to play around with all kinds of things. Cool concepts, neat designs, creative worlds, and watching that spark of magic fizzle away, seeing every game kinda look the same, and watch as the life has been drained out of the world in Pokemon, it makes me sad. I know they can do better, and I wish they would strive to do better. I think it's really scummy what they're trying to do with their legal team in regards to Palworld, and that's not even to say Palworld is good or anything. I haven't played it, I wouldn't know, but come on, Game Freak. A small indie company is doing laps around you when it comes to style and gameplay, and with all your billions of dollars, you can't even best them without suing them first? I don't know. It's been this way for so long now. I think we're all just used to taking Pokemon for granted. It makes us nostalgic, and you feel like a kid again for a while, and we let that blind us to the flaws of the games. We keep setting our standards lower than usual because we get consumed by that nostalgia. Well, my nostalgia isn't blinding me anymore. I want to see the Pokemon Company, Game Freak, and Nintendo strive towards improving their games and setting higher standards. I'm having so much fun with Digimon. I am in love with it, and I wish I could feel that way about Pokemon again. I used to feel this way about Pokemon all the time, but with all their recent games, I just don't. They don't have any heart. They're not capturing my love. They're not exciting. They're not fun. And I'm really glad I have Digimon to fill that role instead. So we need to start setting higher standards for Game Freak, for Pokemon. After all, I want Pokemon to be the very best, like no one ever was, right? Shout out to my $10 patrons, you're all amazing. Andrew, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, Classy Critic, Genital War Thunder, Jake, Amber, Scaring Crows, Not All That Evil, Holly, Messiah, Jacob, Ben's Sketchbook, Rain, Trash, Wild Pilot, Josh, Twisty, Juan, Bunkin Duncan, Hoodie Angel, Ranger, Sean, Primaroon, Overhypin, Lavaros, Knight, Plague, Tyrene, Thanos, Pandemonium, Peter, Agiri, Shahid, Eden, The Eliza, Doki Poki, Moon of Blues, Spencer, Bargus Blue, Cage the Mage, Zappy, Wolfgang, Philip, and Mac and Cheese. This was a long one. It was longer than I expected. I think it's gonna be like an hour. We'll see. What do you think? I covered so many things. If you're enjoying the game, I am happy for you, but what do you think about everything I've said, about everything I've tackled, about the style of the games, the visuals, the gameplay, the world, all of it? What's your thoughts and opinions on it? There's so much to talk about here, and, clearly I spent quite a while talking, so I want to see what you all have to say. If you agree or disagree, I would love to see them in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks if you made it all the way to the end. Bye-bye.